Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Player's Edge. We got the normal crew back together finally after our trip out to Saratoga. And tonight we're joined by a special guest, New York odds maker for the NYRA tracks, Daivid Aragona. David, how are you tonight?
Doing pretty well. Happy to come back on the show and talk a little bit about the Travers. It's a really exciting weekend in racing.
Oh, yes. One of the biggest weekends. I didn't realize it's a $1.25 million race. So they're really chucking some money around at that one, huh?
Oh, for sure. I mean, these races deserve to have the big purses because you want to attract the best talent. And I think that's what has happened this year.
Indeed, for sure. There's definitely a lot of name brand horses to be seen. So far, looking at the Saratoga meet, any particular trends that stick out to you, David, as someone who's got to set the line every day?
Yeah, I mean, I try to follow the way the track is playing from day to day. Generally, I think the dirt's been pretty fair. We've gotten a few rainy days, but those have pretty much been few and far between. The turf courses, I think it's dependent on how they set the rails, which, setting they have them at the temporary rails on both the inner and the melon turf course. It's changed kind of throughout the meet. But based on what we saw today, it seems like the turf is playing pretty fair heading into Travers weekend.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. When we were there 2 weeks ago, I noticed that we were there for the 4-Star Dave weekend, and on Friday, I think every race but one, the 1, 2, or 3 won on the dirt. I think it was actually even on the turf as well. And then on 4-Star Dave Saturday, we saw the same thing where a lot of the inside horses were winning. Is there something going on with the track that you think that favors the inside horses?
Yeah, especially 4-Star Dave weekend on the inner turf course. They had the rails taken down, the temporary rails, so they were running right on the hedge. And on that turf course, if you were in the inside path, it seemed like you had a real advantage. A little bit on the dirt, too. Some people thought there was an inside or a speed bias that weekend. But generally, the track has been pretty fair, especially the main dirt track. It's just a question of whether or not the horses handle it, because it can be kind of a demanding, quirky surface that some horses just don't seem to get over.
So we're joined by just Tom tonight. We met Thomas out in Saratoga. Tom, you had a nice trip back. How are you tonight?
I did, and wonderful tonight. Dave, what was the hardest race of the Saturday card to put a morning line on?
Oof. I think I have to look back at my PPs. I think it was race 7. I'm sorry. That 5.5 furlong optional claimer. Just a race where I was tempted to make everybody 9-2 or 5-1 and just call it a day. It looks very evenly matched on paper. Hard to peg a favorite in that race.
Those are my favorites. Terry, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm doing really good. Hi, David. How are you?
Good.
Hey, I was wondering, this is something away from horse racing. You're really busy, I can tell. I looked at some of the things today. I was wondering, when you do get some free time, which I bet isn't very much, what do you like to do other than horse racing or be involved with horse racing? I mean,
during the Saratoga meet, it's just as simple as kind of getting away from the computer and getting outside, going for a walk. Sometimes if I can get the chance to do it, I like to go for a hike during like the late summer, early fall, just to kind of get outside and see some nature away from all the technology. But I mean, even during the Saratoga meet, just something as simple as like going out for dinner, a drink, just decompressing a little bit. I mean, you need to take those breaks.
Yes, you do. Yeah,
indeed, we do. Speaking of breaks, this is Mr. I'm always on break. Sean, how are you?
Yeah, right.
He's never on break.
Good. David, not only do you make morning lines, you handicap as well. On Twitter, it's always amazing to me. Maybe you can tell us some of your secrets. It's always amazing. I might not even watch a race, but I'll go back to your tweets. And, there's a 12-1 that happened that day, and you called it out 5 minutes before the race comes on. Where are some of your handicapping secrets and tricks?
I mean, especially during Saratoga, I think it's just finding the right races where you can kind of have those opinions. There are a lot of horses that get bet down to pretty short prices, and you want to find the ones that you think are vulnerable, the races that look a little bit more wide open, where, the horses that are going to take the most money aren't necessarily the ones that have a significant edge. So I just try to find those situations where I feel like a horse or two is going to get lost in the wagering. The public's not going to really be on them, and they can offer the value, because that's kind of what you're always trying to do as a horse player, find the horses that are the right value.
Absolutely. So how does the time form help you with that?
Yeah, I mean, I use the Timeform US PPs quite a bit. Obviously, the pace projector is a popular feature, just kind of seeing how a race is going to be run from a pace standpoint, who the front runners, the closers are, what the race shape is going to look like if it's going to have a fast or slow pace. So I kind of start my pace handicapping from there, looking at that and kind of formulating my own opinions based on that. Craig Milkowski, my colleague who makes the Timeform US speed figures, does a fantastic job. Those speed figures kind of have pace built into them. So whether a horse closed into a slow pace or survived a fast pace, they get upgraded or downgraded on their speed figures based on that. So I just think that there are some interesting tools that are a little different in Timeform US that can help you see the race from another perspective.
Do you ever get conflicted as a handicapper and a odds maker when you personally are making a bet?
I try not to. I mean, I try to take my own personal feelings out of it when I'm making the morning line. Sometimes people look at the race similarly to me, and I try to stay on top of that. If I like to look for bad trips, and a really obvious trip happened in a horse's last race, I know that a lot of people are going to want to bet that back. So I try to stay on top of that stuff. But as far as my own personal handicapping goes, I try to make that separate from the morning line, so I don't influence it too much with my personal feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say that when I go through the New York, a lot of odds makers, I don't pay attention to the odds, but if I get through my handicapping, I come back and I see one that has some nice numbers on it from you, it always makes me take a double look because I respect the work that you do that much.
Appreciate that.
I have a question about the.
Go ahead, Sean.
I have a question about the morning line too. Last week during the week, it was a Monday or Tuesday. Prairie Meadows had a 4-1 morning line go off at 39-1, and the horse ended up winning. And somebody asked the question, was that a good morning line or a bad morning line?
So from my viewpoint, the morning line and the price of the horse has nothing to do with whether they win or lose. I'm just trying to peg the way the public is going to bet the race. I mean, there was a race early in the meet where I had a horse in a maiden race at 15-1 that got bet down to the 2-1 favorite, which for me is like a gigantic miss. I'm rarely that off. And it was a situation where there was a big tip on the horse. The trainer had told a lot of people he liked the horse, and it just took all the money. I was not privy to that information. And the horse ran up the track. It didn't do well at all. And people were saying to me, oh, well, you were the one that was right because you said it at 15-1. And I was saying, no, I wasn't right because the horse was still 2-1. That's a miss for me. So I just try to peg them on the odds that they go off at post time.
Mm-hmm. That's I wish I could get better at doing that so I can find value in there. It's something I haven't quite been able to figure out. So if someone wants to make their own line so they can get value, how do we do that exactly? Is there like a instruction manual somewhere, or how without giving away the secrets of the sauce, how would you go about doing that if you're just an average Joe bettor?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I think a lot of players find pretty tough, just talking to other people who bet the races. And actually making the morning line has really helped me in my own handicapping, knowing what prices the horses are going to be, because it just makes me think about it more. So I find that the value lines that I make are actually a lot closer to the real-time odds of the horse. So that helps me a little bit with the handicapping portion of it. But I mean, depending on what track you're betting on, I think you have to know how accurate the morning line is. If it's something you can rely on, if it is, you can kind of go off that and, make adjustments based on that, using your opinions. But if you're handicapping without a morning line, I acknowledge it's a tough thing to do, to know how the public's going to approach a race and what you think the fair odds are on a horse. I mean, a lot of people don't take the time to do it, but I think it's instructive to kind of sit down and, make a spreadsheet and input your value line and have it add up to 100 and, compare the real-time odds to the horses and the prices that you think they should be. And sometimes some value plays could really stand out that you might not have thought about if you were just kind of, looking at the right horses on a piece of paper.
Can you make it go to 100? Because the odds never add up to 100 when you do the implied value.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to you. So a lot of people who make a value line try to make it add up to 100, kind of taking into account that they're trying to beat the track's takeout. That's an ambitious goal. That's a tough thing to do. But when you're making the morning line and the so-called points, they have to add up to a number usually like over 120, typically somewhere below 130.
Okay, so I mean that's what I'm gonna. I always struggle with that. So we'll hopefully we don't struggle with our picks tonight. The first race we're gonna do is the personal Enzyme Stakes. It's a Grade 1, 1 1/8 on the main track. So from your view of the track so far this year, what should we expect in terms of bias, David, for a 1 1/8 on Saratoga's main track?
Well, for this one, it's a pretty small, compact field. Certainly not a bad field. All the right horses are in this race, but it's just 5 horses. So I don't think too many are going to get poor trips in here. Generally, you want to have some forward position on the main track. I think you want to avoid that kickback that can get pretty intense in the larger fields. I don't think that's going to be too much of a factor in this race. I anticipate everyone's going to have a fair chance.
So when you look at the pace, do you think Latruska gets up onto the lead by itself and gets pressed by search results, or do you think that the others are going to get involved?
Yeah, tactically, this is a really fascinating race because it's kind of a rematch of the Ogden Phipps. I mean, the 4 major players from that race, Latruska, Search Results, Clarier, and Malathot, they're all back in here. And obviously, if you watch that Ogden Phipps, you know that it featured an extreme pace scenario where Latruska and Search Results just went after each other on the front end, or really Search Results and Irad Ortiz went after Latruska, basically just trying to break her heart on the front end. And they were successful in doing so, but Search Results lost the war, even though she won that battle with Latruska. She was just susceptible to the closers at the end of the race. I have a hard time believing that they're going to make that same mistake again and just knock heads on the front end to that extent. I feel like we're going to see a much more moderate pace situation in this race, and you have to imagine that's going to favor Latruska.
You think Irad was mad at Jose that day?
I mean, they've both ridden Latruska, and I think they both know the way to beat her. I mean, Irad was the one that was on her in the Breeders' Cup Distaff when she got hounded and was not able to withstand the pressure that day. And I'm sure Irad on Search Results knows this is the only way to beat Latruska, to go after her that way. And he was successful in doing it, just wasn't able to get to the winner's circle. I know Chad Brown and the Connections were not happy the extent to which he used their horse in the early stages. So I anticipate we're going to see a different ride from Flavian Pratt on Search Results this time.
For sure. So who do you like?
So I think it's a really interesting race. I mean, Clarier is the one to beat based on her last 2 victories. She's turned the tables on Malathot. She's got that one's number now after she was consistently beaten by her as a 3-year-old. And she's coming in with the best form. But she got that great pace setup in the Phipps. I'm not sure that's going to happen again here. And I'm really interested in Search Results because she's the one that I thought ran the best race in the Phipps, surviving that early duel, only losing by 2 lengths. I know some people don't love the stretch out to 1 1/8 for her, but I think she's run just fine in her 1 1/8 races in the past. And I think they're going to ride her a little bit more conservatively this time. I don't anticipate they'll let Latruska get away on the front end. I think that they'll keep her in their sights, but I think that it's not going to fall apart the same way that it did in the Ogden Phipps. And I just like Search Results' form this year. I think she's coming in doing really well, and I anticipate that she's going to get the right trip this time.
And probably going to be a pretty good price, too, I'd imagine, with this field. How about you, Terry? Who do you think is going to win this race?
Well, I like the number 3 Clarier because it was hard for me to not pick that one. She's won 2 races in a row and has a high percentage winning trainer, Steve F. Newson, jockey Joe Rosario, and she has a highest speed rating at today's distance. So I like as my second pick, number 5, Malathot. Finished in the money in 11 out of 11 career races. So she likes to be in the mix. She's winning 7 of those contests, including the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks. She's trained by Todd Fletcher and ridden by John Velasquez, a combo that in the last 14 days has won 2 out of 5 races and a third. And then number 2, Search Results. I like her. She's finished in the money in the last 10 races, won 6 of the contest, including the Grade 1 Acorn. She's trained by Chad Brown and ridden by Flavian Pratt and has a good workout on August 20th. And then number 1, Latruska, has won 19 out of 26 starts. You can't really fault that. She took a 2-month plus break to get some rest after finishing that disastrous 5th in her last race and returns with a good furlong workout on August 19th. She'll again try to lead all the way to the finish line.
Thomas. No bombs from Tom. What do you got here?
There's not in this race.
Well, no, of course, not in a 5-horse race.
No, not really. I did agree with Terry. I think Le Carrier is the best running horse. And point out, in the Apple Blossom, when she lost to Latruska, it was 1 1/16 race, and she was coming at the end. Well, this is a little extra furlong, and I think that only benefits her and hurts some of these other horses. Malathot, you can't really knock her. She's always trying. And I'm going to put Crazy Beautiful as my choice. Another one that likes to be around the board, but her negative is, of course, her only win is on the all-weather this year. But she's got technical speed, and maybe I think she's good enough to hit the board.
And then Sean, I know you're a big Latruska fan because even you think you could ride that one to the winner's circle.
Yeah, and what's crazy here is you guys already kind of touched on it. The best thing for Latruska and Jose Ortiz is that Irad Ortiz is not in this race, which is crazy. She's had poor performances before and come right back and won. So, and I don't even consider that a poor performance. She just got it taken to her that day. She's done good at Saratoga, winning 2 of 3. She's done better at the distance, winning 4 of 6. If you look at Clairiere, the distance in Saratoga is just average for her. And she's run some of her best races lately. Latruska, I don't think we can punish her last race, and I don't think she's done. So I'm going to take Latruska, especially if she really is. And David usually nails this. If she's the third choice, sign me up all day long for Latruska here. Clairiere, I got to go with second. She's in form, been in prime. The distance, though, she's only won that one, and that was that last race where she got the perfect setup. Rosario's back aboard for the 5th straight race. He's won 3 of 4 of her so far and has only been betting favorite twice in her career, and she won both times. Malatat's always there, has finished in the exacting 10 of 11 career races while winning 7 of those, and does get the outside post. So if 2 horses do hook up, I do like the stalking trip there with Malatat as well.
Yeah, I'm afraid they might go back out fast again, search result in Latruska, because I don't think the dynamic has changed. If you don't get in front of Latruska and you let her get away with easy fractions, she's going to kill you. And I in a race like this, I'm looking for a horse that has an advantage. And when I look at the late pace numbers on Clairiere has an edge over the rest of this field. And I think in a 5-horse field, you're going to see the horse not that far off the pace, because I don't think you're going to see a great deal of separation from front to back. And if that's indeed the case and Clairiere is right on everybody's hooves, that late pace advantage is going to be enough to carry the horse home. I like Malatat as my second choice. Latruska is my third choice. And then search results to kind of press and then kind of fade a little bit at the end. That's how I see it. We're going to see how we see race number 10. This is the Sword Dancer Stakes, 1.5 miles on the inner turf. Any idea where they're going to set the rails for this one, David?
I believe at the inner turf this week, they're at 9 feet, I want to say. And we saw it play very fairly today, whereas there was kind of that inside bias for the prior 2 weeks. So pleased to see that rail setting for this race.
So you think that makes it a little bit fairer for the outside horses then?
Yeah.
All right. So how do you see this 1.5 mile thing breaking down? I look at it and I think Tribhuven has actually a little bit of an early pace advantage on this field, and perhaps at 6 furlongs might be a length ahead of everybody else and can get away with some decent fractions, maybe steal this one. Think that's possible, David, or no?
I mean, it's kind of a similar discussion to the race we just talked about, where, who's going to go after Tribhuvan and how fast are they going to go? Because it kind of looked the same way in the Sword Dancer last year, you might remember. And Channelmaker, I mean, they came out of the gate. I believe it was Manny Franco on him that day. Like, it was a quarter horse race trying to get to the front end. And he got in front of Tribhuvan and basically just gave that one no chance when Tribhuvan did not make the lead. So you wonder what's going to happen here. Channelmaker's back in the race. I think he's 8 years old now, so it's questionable whether he still has that same early speed. But there are other horses in this race that could potentially be somewhat forward. I mean, that Mira Mission on the outside is a bit of a wild card. I know he doesn't have the most aggressive jockey on board, but you want to see Tribhuvan prove that he can, set it on his pace and get this 1.5 mile distance, because he hasn't done it so far. I think he's been against some tough pace situations in his prior races at 1.5 miles in the Sword Dancer and also the Breeders' Cup last year. But he's run his best races going the 1.25 mile distance. So that's a real question mark for him. I mean, Chad Brown has others in here. Rock Emperor, to me, he's just a cut below, but he does pop up with a big race every now and then. And I mean, on the U.S. side of things, it feels like Ed Hamo, who's coming off that victory in the United Nations, he's kind of the horse to beat off that last performance. I know the barns always liked this horse. He's come along a little bit more slowly than maybe they would have liked, but it feels like he's kind of put everything together now. Flavian Pratt, who's on him, just kind of has this knack for always putting his horses in the right position. So I expect him to get a good trip. The big question for me, though, is can anybody beat Broom, the European invader for Aidan O'Brien? Because, I mean, you might remember he ran a huge race in the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. I know Yabir got all the accolades for that big stretch run that he put in, but Broom arguably ran the best race that day, making that huge move around the far turn, going wide to take over at the top of the stretch. I mean, he doesn't always show up with his best effort. He's got some consistency issues, but when he shows up, he is really tough to beat. And to me, he's a deserving favorite in this race.
Do you make anything of Ryan Moore coming? It seems like when Ryan Moore makes the trip, the horses tend to be a bit more live.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it means that they're really serious about this one. And, it's a grade one race. Aidan O'Brien generally ships over to win these, especially with the older horses. And he's one that seems like he's suited to American racing. He already proved that last year. And he's just one of these horses that seems to run well, whatever the surface or the type of track. He put in a huge effort in the Hardwick 2 back. I know that was just a Group 2 event at Royal Ascot, but he beat some really nice horses that day and did so quite convincingly. I wouldn't hold his last effort in the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth against him, because I mean that was a race where the pace kind of heated up midway through. The horse that went favorite in there for Judd Bont, whose name is escaping me now, the Irish Derby winner, Broom really went after him in the middle of the race, and that horse faded to finish last. So I don't want to hold it.
Hurricane Lane.
Yeah.
Hurricane Lane, my favorite horse.
So Broom didn't run nearly as poorly as it seems that day. And I just think he's coming in great form, and I made him my top pick here. I don't know if we're going to get that 3-1 morning line. I'm kind of unsure of how they're going to assess this horse with those, those European running lines. But to me, he's way the horse to beat.
So that's your pick then, Broom to win?
Yes.
All right. I got a feeling Tom's going to second that motion, but maybe I'm wrong. Tom?
You are wrong. I'm going to take 6 Gufo.
Oh.
I tossed the last. I think he lost it at the start. He was really never into that race until late, and now I find it interesting they're making an equipment change. They're adding blinkers.
Mm-hmm.
Get him to pay a little more attention, I think. And I think that may get him to the winner's circle. I mean, at this distance, he's got 5 starts and 3 wins and a third. I just feel like that he's going to catch that speed on the end and be right there. Yeah, I did take Broom for a second. It's kind of hard to pass on a horse that's running in a Group 2 at Royal Ascot that really is a Group 1 race. And then look at the last race he ran in. He faced Pile Driver, he faced the Arc winner and Terry Arcotoso, and he faced Mistrif. Mistrif ran second to Baid in the next race. And Baid's considered the best horse in the world right now.
It's a foreign horse that even Sean knows who it is.
Yeah. And, he ran second in the Breeders' Cup to Yabir. The only thing with Ryan Moore is he's got 6 rides in this country, and he's got a big goose egg in terms of wins. So, but he's coming over again, and they're serious when they bring him over because he's number 1 in that stable.
Mm-hmm.
I took the 1. Adam Moore is my final choice. I really liked the last race at Monmouth. He really wasn't asked to do a lot, but he won it nicely. And in his 4 starts at the States, I mean, he's never been out of the money. The negative on him is, of course, he's not a grade or a Group 1 winner yet, but you never know.
Sean, what do you say?
So I have a question for David, because, the first thing I look at is the pacing here. And I obviously looked at Tribute Heaven, and then I was looking at Channel Maker. David, the Time for US has the early pace for Channel Maker really low. How did that number get figured out?
Yeah, I'll say that the pace ratings in these marathon races are really tough. I mean, it's based on how fast they've run in their prior races. And as you know, watching these 1.5-mile races, the paces can vary greatly. Sometimes they go 48 to the half. Sometimes they go 52 or 53 to the half. So horses that are coming out of some of those extremely slow-paced races, even if they were on the lead, are going to have lower pace figures or pace ratings. And that's just the case with Channel Maker. I mean, I would not put too much stock in that. Horses are not running as fast as they can possibly go at the beginning of these 1.5-mile for marathon races. So I would expect Channel Maker to be a lot more forward than he's shown by that pace figure or the early pace or the Time for US pace projector.
Thanks. So then the other thing is, Rich, this is right like that Manhattan that you called. You said either Channel Maker or Tribute Haven was going to get loose and one of them was going to win. You went with Channel Maker and you looked
50-50 choice. I got it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, you got left in the gate, and Tribute Haven did exactly what you said would happen. And I'm going to go with Tribute Haven here. I just like the price, and I think it could happen again. It's done well at a price before, so it doesn't bother me. She faltered last time at 1-1. But I think he repeats here. And then number 2, second pick is number 1, Amo. Keeps getting better and is ready to fire another good race here. Pace is the only thing that works against this horse, and I think it works against a lot of horses in here. Has beaten some of these same horses before. And then third, another one that the pace is going to work against, but this horse always comes, is Tom's pick, Gufo. Always flying late, and they're at the end. He's finishing in trifecta in 16 of 18 career races, so he's going to be there. Has performed well at Saratoga and has won 3 of 5 career races at this distance. He does add blinkers, so maybe he'll be a little closer to the pace.
Terry?
Well, I agree with Tom. Number 6, Gufo. He's finishing the money 16 out of 18 career races, and he's won 8 of those contests. In addition to that, he really likes his distance. As Tom said, he's won 3 out of 5 races and has a third. And he has a pretty good workout on August 19th. Then I like the number 3, Broom. He's coming in from Europe, where he's done very well in graded stakes races, and has the highest speed figure at today's distance. His best turf speed is fastest among today's starters, and he really performs well at today's distance. And number 8, Soldier Rising, is my third pick. He is moving up in class from his last start, which was he won at Saratoga. He has finished in the money at 100% of his starts at 1.5 miles and likes to race at Saratoga. Jockey Irad Ortiz is in the irons, and he's trained by Christophe Clement. And then I like the number 1 at Adamo. He has never finished out of the money since arriving from France. He's won his last race at Monmouth Park, the Grade 1 United Nations, which I think was really a good race. He is trained by Chad Brown and ridden by Flabrian Pratt, and has a good furlong workout on August 19th.
For me, I'm going to go, I don't know, Terry, if you're in my notes or what today, but our first 3 horses are exactly the same. I'm going to go with Gufo. I look at those workouts that the horse has getting ready. Looks like they're working them out a little bit faster than they usually do. So I have a feeling Joel's not going to be 11 lengths off the lead. I got a feeling he's going to be closer to the pace than we're normally used to seeing Gufo. And if that's the case, Gufo has a late pace edge over everybody else in this field. And if I just have a gut feeling Joel's going to have him closer to the front this time out. As we talked about, when Ryan Moore makes the trip overseas, that they think Broom has a legitimate shot here. Talked a lot about the kind of quality that this horse faced at the Royal Ascot. I think that you maybe not seeing the same sort of quality here, but still a high quality race. Broom, I think, is probably the horse to beat. Soldier Rising ran much better fractions last time out. It's a horse that takes a liking to the distance. And finally, I think Tribhuvan, if he can get to the lead, I do think he has a plus edge at the 6 furlong marker. If he gets to the 6 furlong marker and he runs a reasonable time, you might not see a horse pass him in the stretch and could possibly I think he's got the best shot to take him wire to wire. And if he does run, I don't know, David, what do you think? If he runs 6 furlongs in 111, 112, you think they'll be able to catch him?
I think that would be a little taxing for him. If it's 113, 114, then he'll be tough to catch. But if it's as fast as it was last year when they went in, even last year, that was kind of a softer turf course. It was 114 and he got caught. So, it's a fine line to try to walk, to go as slow as you can while also not letting everybody else into the race.
For sure. Well, the last race we're going to cover is the big one of the day. That is the Travers, $1.25 million, 1.25 miles. I think it's a pretty competitive field. Obviously, Epicenter is the name brand horse here. That's the one you made the morning line, David. Do you think the horse is going to go off at even money or less when it finally goes off?
It's tough for me to say. I mean, he might go off a little shorter than 7-5. I have trouble seeing him going off that much shorter because, I mean, I would say that I pegged Rich Strike at kind of the upper limit of what he can go off. I'm not going to be surprised when all of his legion of fans bet him down to a lower price. He just seems to take, or horses like that, the underdog horses in these races are seeming to take a lot of money these days. So we'll see how short Epicenter goes off, but I don't see him going off lower than even money in this race.
All right. So as far as the pace setup in this race is concerned, to me, it looks like there's a little bit more early pace. You got 3, maybe 4 horses that can compete for the lead. So do you expect the front end pace to be a little bit hot and maybe damage the likes of opportunity for a horse like early voting?
Yeah, I actually don't see that much speed in this race. I mean, I know early voting is generally expected to go forward. He obviously has the most early speed of anybody in this field. I do know his connections are not that keen on him being used that aggressively. I know they love the trip that he got in the Preakness when he sat second to another horse, and they believe he's best that way. I don't know who we can possibly sit second to here because I don't know who else is going to go to the front. If you put a gun to my head, I would say Epicenter is going to be on the lead in this race. I think that they don't want to mess around with getting him in trouble like has been the case when he's been a little too far back in some of his prior races. They believe they've got the best horse coming in, and I think they're not going to mess around with this trip. If he breaks cleanly, I think Joel Rosario is going to go forward with him.
So how do you like this horse? How do you see him lining up when they hit the tape?
I don't like to default to favorites, but I did wind up picking Epicenter in this race. He's just in such great form right now. He seems like such a confident horse coming into this race. He's got this versatile running style where he can be on the lead or come from last like he did in the Jim Dandy last time. And I know that he lost both of the Derby and the Preakness at short prices, but he had an excuse in the Preakness. Arguably was best that day. You know, the Derby, it was what it was. I mean, Rich Strike put in that freakish performance that I don't know if we'll ever see from him again, but Epicenter, again, arguably around the best race in the Derby. And he's just the best 3-year-old. He's only missing that grade 1 win on his resume, but, you know, I think he's a deserving favorite to get it here. And as long as the trip works out and he kind of is due for a good trip, I mean, he's owed one at this point. I think he's going to win this race. I don't love the price on him. I just couldn't really build a case for anybody else being the right value play in this Travers. So I put Epicenter on top.
And who do you got anything behind it you think that can maybe make for a nice little exacta?
Yeah, I mean, the horse, I don't have like great clever opinions in this race. I mean, the horse that I was considering to maybe take a shot against him with is the number 1 Cyberknife, who is the second choice that I pegged on the line. I just thought he ran really well in the Haskell last time. Did get a perfect trip in that race, but I thought he took a nice step forward that day. He's another that has some tactical speed that I don't think is going to be too compromised if they go slowly up front. So I think he's interesting. And the number 8 Zandon is a horse that I've always been a fan of. I wish I had seen a little more progression from him his last couple of starts. He did not run quite as well as Epicenter in the Derby, though it's close. And then last time out in the Jim Dandy, he didn't have the late punch I was really expecting to see from him. So I've kind of gone off of him a little bit, but he feels like one that might get a little bit lost on the tote board. So I could see maybe being priced into him, but I did put him third.
All right. How about you, Sean? Do you think Epicenter can be beat here?
No, I have Epicenter. The only thing I am concerned about is the pace. I mean, if you're going to take a shot, I think you got to take a shot with early voting as far as that with those odds. If you get 8-1 or plus, it's probably worth the shot that this horse gets loose on the lead. But my top pick is Epicenter. Ever since his career debut, he's been exact in every one of the 8 races. Could have won the ones that he finished second. It's just a matter of trip. Clearly the horse to beat. And one of only 2 horses in this field to actually have a win at Saratoga, the other being the number 5 Artorias. Cyberknife, I went second. This horse has been really good form. Won 4 of the last 5 races. The only loss was that terrible performance in the Derby. It's gotten really good and sitting on another big race. The rail could work out too because this horse could be sitting right off of early voting. So if early voting fades and doesn't get that lead and get the distance, then Cyberknife could be right there. And then early voting is my third pick. I'm really scared of this horse's speed. But if this horse does change tactics and sits second, then I don't like this horse as much. I'm actually surprised they would consider that, as I don't see anybody else. Like David, I don't see anybody else getting the lead. I don't even see Epicenter really trying. I mean, unless if it's just handed on a plate for him and then he would go.
And how about you, Terry?
Well, I've picked Zandon over Epicenter twice now, and this time I'm not going to do that mistake.
So you know who's going to win then, right?
Yeah, Zandon. But I'm taking number 6 Epicenter because, you know, he's finished in the money in 8 out of 9 career races. He's won 5 of those contests. He finished second in both the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, and he won the Grade 2 Jim Dandy in his last race at 1 1/8 miles, and now he stretches out to 1 1/4 miles, where he has done really well in the past. Then I'm going to take number 8 Zandon because I've always liked Zandon. He was my Derby pick, but Zandon's never finished out of the money in his 6-race career. He's won the Grade 1 Bluegrass. He's trained by Chad Brown and ridden by Flabber and Pratt. And he's only competed in grade 1 and 2 contests, except for when he broke his maiden. And then I taken my third pick, number 1, Cyberknife. He's really done really well. He's had 4 out of 6 races this year that he's won, and just seems to be getting better with each race, receiving a 104 speed rating in his last race while winning the grade 1 Haskell. He's trained by Brad Cox, whose entries in the last 14 days has finished in the money 6 out of 7 races and won 3 of those. And Cyberknife has a really good workout on August 20th. And then I like a long shot, number 5, Artorias. You know, he won his last race at Saratoga, improving in each race as the distance of the race increases. And his speed rating improves with each and every race. And I really think he's going to like the little bit of extra distance here.
Thomas, take us through your Travers picks.
I took Cyberknife as my top choice. Can't complain about his last 2 races. I like the fact that he stalked the pace in one, and then he was on the pace in the other. He's run 2 bad races in his career. He's Kentucky Derby and the Lacombe were the 2 where he just didn't show up. And otherwise, he's been right there, and I don't see him not being right there again. I took 5, Artorias as my next choice. Got 2 wins. He was in a restricted race at Saratoga and won by 4+. He moved up and went by and really looked pretty easy. This is a horse that's late developing, and I always like him at this time of year. You got to watch out for him. Finally, I took Zandon as my final choice, consistently in the money. He runs anywhere close to his bluegrass race, or he's shown that he can weave through traffic and it doesn't bother him, and he gets right up there. I really think the Jim Dandy, he just needed a race. He had some time off, and a little bit of probably not 100% in that race. This may have sharpened him up enough to hit the board. And
well, I think that Percenter is the one to beat in here. Minus some goofy runs, the horse probably wins his last 8 races. That Kentucky Derby trip that he had, and he still was fighting on at the end. The same thing in the Preakness. I think if he doesn't get a goofy trip, he's going to be really, really hard to beat. I like Zandon as my second choice. Again, Terry, in my notes. You got to cut that out, my friend. No wonder your computer's not working. So you're hacking into mine. But I think Zandon has the most late pace for this crew. And just me looking through the numbers on the horse, it looks to me like he's on the rise. So maybe he's going to live up to your expectations, Terry. And if he does get lost with the bettors and the odds go up, I think it could be a really good value. Early voting, I have that one pegged as the leader at 6 furlongs. And as long as he runs the right fractions, he probably has a shot to go wire to wire. And then for me, I'm going to go with Artorias over Cyberknife. It's a mystery card here. Stepping way up in class, hasn't seen anything close to what it's about to see today. But I look at that last race for Cyberknife over at the Haskell. That 104 number is way out of line from anything else that the horse has run so far. So I feel like the horse has a big opportunity to bounce here. And if you kind of look back when the horse has put together a couple of really big late pops at the end, some of those really funky races that it ran afterwards in the Lacombe and in the Kentucky Derby came after the horse put in some peak numbers somewhere on that pace chart. So I'm afraid the Cyberknife is going to bounce in this spot. So that's why I put the youngster in this one, the less experienced horse. All right, that wraps it up. David, if folks want to follow along with you online for all your great insights, like Sean says, man, you're throwing out 12 to 1s when we're trying to hit 2 to 1s. So if folks want to keep up with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. At Horse to Watch is my handle. I do a podcast a couple times a week, which you can find on the Daily Racing Form channel, wherever you get your podcasts. I do it with the Timeform US speed figure maker, Craig Milkowski. We do some handicapping, some race recaps. And my daily NYRA analysis is available on NYRA.com/TimeformUS.
Yes, and we link to it over on Horse Racing Today every day. That's probably where you're getting all your traffic from, David. Probably doubtful. All right, folks. So that wraps it up. It takes us wire to wire. David, we greatly appreciate you coming back a second time. Looking forward to the third time that you come back with us. That'll be a great show as well, I'm sure. Until we meet again tomorrow, I know that the folks Eddie P and Chris C have put together, Chris P and Eddie C have put together their entire sheet for this weekend. And then that should be live on Saturday, though we might ask them to put it up a little bit earlier. Tom and I will be back tomorrow for Foreign Fridays again. Tom, what are we covering tomorrow?
We're going to look at some races from Goodwood, and then we're going to look at some races from Red Car, and they're very different types of races than we've looked at before.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. Terry and I will be back Monday morning with Parks. So until then, until we get together again, we hope no matter what you do, David, what the rest of you do, that it ends up in one place, and that is in the
Winner's circle.
Absolutely. Thanks again, David. Have a great night, everybody.